Before you send that text, chase them again, or blame yourself for their distance. You need to understand these hidden psychological truths. Have you ever loved someone who seemed deeply connected one moment, only to become distant the next? Someone who appeared warm, caring, and emotionally present, then suddenly withdrew without explanation. Perhaps you tried harder, loved more intensely, sent longer messages, offered reassurance, or sacrificed your own needs and hopes of bringing them closer. Yet the more you pursued, the further they seemed to drift away. This painful dynamic leaves many people confused, heartbroken, and questioning their own worth. They often assume the avoidant person simply does not care. But human behavior is rarely that simple. Beneath emotional distance often lies an invisible inner world shaped by fear, unconscious patterns, old wounds, and a profound struggle between the longing for intimacy and the fear of losing oneself within it. Many people unknowingly make critical mistakes when relating to avoidance. These mistakes are understandable because they arise from love, fear, and the natural desire for connection. However, these responses frequently intensify the very distancing they are trying to prevent. Today we will explore the biggest mistakes people make with avoidance and uncover why these patterns emerge. More importantly, we will discover a healthier path, one that preserves your dignity, deepens self-understanding, and creates the possibility for authentic connection. Many people believe that when someone they love begins to withdraw, the solution is simple: move closer. They call more often, send longer messages, ask for reassurance, and attempt to increase emotional intimacy. On the surface, this reaction seems completely natural. Human beings are wired for connection, and when that connection feels threatened, the instinct is often to pursue it more intensely. Yet in relationships involving avoidant individuals, this response frequently produces the opposite of the intended result. Avoidant individuals often carry deep, unconscious fears surrounding intimacy. These fears are not always obvious even to them. They may genuinely desire closeness, companionship, and love. In fact, many avoidants long for profound connection. However, as emotional intimacy deepens, old psychological defenses can become activated. Somewhere within their inner world exists an association between closeness and danger. Emotional dependence may unconsciously feel like a loss of freedom, individuality, or personal control. When an avoidant begins to pull away, the partner often interprets this distance as a sign that something is terribly wrong. Anxiety rises. Thoughts begin to spiral. Are they losing interest? Did I do something wrong? Are they about to leave? Driven by fear, the person responds by increasing contact. They may repeatedly ask, "What's wrong?" or "Why are you acting differently?" They may seek constant reassurance, hoping to restore the emotional closeness they once experienced. Unfortunately, the avoidant often experiences this increased pursuit not as love, but as pressure. What feels comforting to one person can feel overwhelming to another. The more the avoidant senses emotional demands being placed upon them, the stronger their need for distance may become. They retreat further, seeking relief from the intensity they are experiencing. A painful cycle then emerges. One person pursues because they fear abandonment, while the other withdraws because they fear being emotionally engulfed. Each person's behavior unintentionally reinforces the other's deepest fears. The pursuer sees distance as evidence that they are unworthy of love. The avoidant sees pursuit as confirmation that closeness threatens their autonomy. What makes this dynamic especially tragic is that neither person is usually acting out of malice. Both are attempting to protect themselves from emotional pain. Yet protection often comes at the expense of connection. True intimacy cannot be forced into existence through persistence, sacrifice, or relentless pursuit. Human relationships thrive when both individuals feel psychologically safe. Sometimes the most powerful response to withdrawal is not chasing but remaining grounded within yourself. Maintaining your own emotional center communicates stability, respect, and confidence. It allows space for genuine closeness to emerge voluntarily rather than through pressure, creating the conditions in which authentic connection has the greatest chance to grow. One of the most painful mistakes people make when dealing with avoidance is taking their distance as a personal judgment of their worth. When an avoidant partner becomes plagued, pulls away emotionally, or suddenly needs space, many people immediately turn inward and begin blaming themselves. I feel mean that they must have said something wrong, failed in some way, or simply are not enough. This interpretation can become deeply damaging because it transforms another person's behavior into a reflection of one's own value. Human beings naturally seek explanations for emotional pain. The mind dislikes uncertainty, and when faced with distance or rejection, it quickly creates stories to make sense of what is happening. If they loved me, they wouldn't need space. If I were more attractive, more interesting, or less needy, they would stay close. These thoughts may feel true in the moment, but they often reveal more about our own hidden insecurities than about the avoidant person's actual feelings. Many avoidants live with a profound internal conflict. They desire love and connection, yet intimacy can simultaneously awaken fear. Closeness may trigger unconscious memories of disappointment, engulfment, criticism, or emotional instability from earlier experiences in life. As a result, when relationships begin to deepen, they may instinctively create distance, not because they do not care, but because vulnerability itself feels threatening. This creates enormous confusion for their partners. One day the avoidant may appear affectionate, engaged, and emotionally available. The next day, they may seem distant or detached. The inconsistency can be extremely painful because it leaves the other person constantly searching for reasons and explanations. In the absence of clear answers, many people conclude that they themselves must be the problem. Yet another person's inability to remain emotionally present should never become the measure of your worth. If your entire sense of value depends upon someone else's availability, you place your emotional life in uncertain hands. You become highly vulnerable to every shift in mood, every delayed message, and every period of withdrawal. Psychologically, relationships often serve as mirrors. They reveal not only who the other person is, but also what remains unresolved within ourselves. An intense distress caused by another person's distance may point toward deeper fears of abandonment, rejection, or unworthiness that existed long before the relationship began. Instead of immediately asking, "Why are they pulling away?" it can be more transformative to ask, "Why does their distance affect my sense of self so deeply?" This question invites self-discovery rather than self-condemnation. It shifts attention from trying to control another person to understanding oneself more honestly. Emotional pain, while difficult, can become an invitation to strengthen one's inner foundation, develop greater self-respect, and learn that personal worth does not rise and fall according to another person's capacity for intimacy. Many people who love avoidance become convinced that if they are patient enough, understanding enough, and loving enough, they can eventually break through the emotional walls that separate them. They believe that unconditional love will heal old wounds, dissolve fears, and transform the relationship into the deep connection they long for. At first, this belief appears compassionate and noble. After all, love is often celebrated as a powerful force capable of changing lives. Yet believing that love alone can heal another person is one of the most painful mistakes people make. The desire to rescue another person frequently emerges from a sincere place. When we see someone struggling emotionally, withdrawing from intimacy, or sabotaging closeness, we naturally want to help. We tell ourselves that if we can simply prove our loyalty, remain patient during every period of distance, and never give up, they will eventually feel safe enough to open their hearts completely. However, deep psychological patterns rarely change through external love alone. Many avoidant tendencies are rooted in experiences that occurred long before the current relationship began. Somewhere in the individual's past, vulnerability may have become associated with pain, disappointment, criticism, rejection, or loss. Emotional defenses were not created randomly. They developed as protective strategies designed to prevent further suffering. Over time, these protective mechanisms become deeply embedded within the personality. They operate largely outside conscious awareness, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors automatically. Because these defenses once served an important purpose, the psyche often clings to them, even when they begin damaging present relationships. No matter how loving, supportive, or understanding you are, you cannot dismantle another person's defenses for them. Genuine transformation requires self-awareness. It requires the willingness to examine painful memories, confront unconscious fears, and take responsibility for one's own emotional patterns. This is inner work that no partner can perform on someone else's behalf. When people believe they can heal avoidance through love alone, they often become trapped in the role of rescuer. Gradually, their entire identity revolves around saving the relationship. They excuse unhealthy behavior, tolerate emotional inconsistency, and ignore their own needs in the hope that their sacrifices will eventually be rewarded. Unfortunately, this dynamic frequently leads to exhaustion and resentment. The rescuer begins giving more and more while receiving less and less. What started as compassion slowly transforms into emotional depletion. Beneath the surface, a silent expectation often develops. After everything I have done for you, you should change. But authentic growth cannot be demanded, negotiated, or earned through sacrifice. It must be freely chosen. Love can create an environment where healing feels possible. It can offer safety, acceptance, and encouragement. Yet healing itself remains a deeply personal journey. The most loving thing we can sometimes do is recognize the limits of our responsibility and allow others to undertake their own path toward wholeness. One of the most common and destructive mistakes people make when loving avoidance is gradually abandoning their own needs in order to preserve the relationship. At first, these sacrifices may seem small and harmless. A person may decide not to bring up a difficult issue because they do not want to create tension. They may ignore feelings of loneliness, suppress disappointment, or convince themselves that asking for more emotional closeness would place too much pressure on their partner. Over time, however, these small acts of self-silencing can become a way of life. Many people fear that expressing their needs will drive the avoidant further away. Because avoidants often become uncomfortable with intense emotional discussions, their partners may begin walking on eggshells. They carefully monitor their words, avoid conflict at all costs, and hide emotions they believe might be perceived as demanding or overwhelming. They tell themselves, "I should be more understanding," or "I don't want to push them." While empathy and patience are important qualities in any relationship, they become unhealthy when they require the denial of one's authentic self. Gradually, an imbalance begins to form. One person adapts constantly while the other remains largely unchanged. The relationship starts revolving around the avoidant's comfort level, emotional pace, and boundaries. Meanwhile, the other person's desires, fears, and emotional needs receive less and less attention. What initially appeared to be love slowly transforms into self-abandonment. Psychologically, this pattern often reflects an unconscious belief that love must be earned through sacrifice. Some individuals learned early in life that acceptance depended upon being easy, accommodating, or emotionally self-sufficient. As adults, they may continue repeating this pattern without realizing it. They become experts at meeting other people's needs while neglecting their own inner world. Yet, unexpressed needs do not disappear simply because they are ignored. The psyche continually seeks balance. Emotions that are repeatedly suppressed often emerge in indirect ways. Anxiety, resentment, sadness, emotional numbness, and even physical exhaustion may begin to appear. A person who has spent months or years minimizing their needs may eventually feel invisible within the relationship. Authentic intimacy cannot exist where authenticity itself is absent. Real closeness requires two individuals who are willing to reveal themselves honestly, including their desires, fears, disappointments, and expectations. Hiding important parts of yourself in order to maintain connection creates only the illusion of intimacy. Paradoxically, healthy boundaries often create greater stability in relationships with avoidance. Clear, respectful communication demonstrates emotional maturity rather than neediness. Saying, "This is important to me," or "These are my needs," is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of self-respect. A relationship should never require you to disappear in order to keep someone close. The strongest connections are not built upon self-sacrifice, but upon mutual recognition, where both individuals feel seen, valued, and free to express their authentic selves without fear. The final and perhaps most damaging mistake people make with avoidance is allowing the relationship to become the center of their entire existence. What often begins as love gradually turns into preoccupation. The person's thoughts, emotions, and daily routines start revolving around the avoidance behavior. They wake up wondering whether there will be a message. They analyze every conversation, every pause, every change in tone, searching for hidden meanings. Their emotional state becomes dependent upon whether the avoidant feels close or distant on any given day. This pattern usually develops slowly. In the beginning, the relationship feels exciting and deeply meaningful. Moments of intimacy may be intense, making periods of distance even more painful. Because avoidants often alternate between closeness and withdrawal, their partners can become caught in a cycle of anticipation and uncertainty. The unpredictability itself can become psychologically consuming. The mind naturally seeks resolution, and when connection feels inconsistent, it often invests even more energy trying to understand, fix, or regain it. As this happens, an unhealthy shift occurs. Absolutely thinking. Instead of maintaining a balanced life, the individual begins organizing their world around the relationship. Hobbies that once brought joy are neglected. Friendships receive less attention. Personal goals are postponed. Creative pursuits, spiritual practices, and self-development slowly fade into the background. The relationship becomes not merely an important part of life, but the very foundation upon which emotional stability rests. From a psychological perspective, this represents a dangerous loss of inner balance. Every human being possesses an inner center, a core sense of identity that should remain relatively stable regardless of external circumstances. When this center becomes attached exclusively to another person, especially someone who struggles with emotional consistency, profound anxiety often follows. Every withdrawal feels catastrophic because it threatens not only the relationship, but one's very sense of self. Many people mistakenly believe that intense focus on another person is evidence of deep love. In reality, obsession and love are not the same. Genuine love allows both individuals to remain separate, autonomous human beings, with rich inner lives of their own. Obsession, however, often emerges when a person unconsciously seeks completion through another. Relationships frequently reveal this hidden tendency. We may discover that we have placed upon another person the responsibility for our happiness, security, purpose, or self-worth. When the other person inevitably fails to fulfill these impossible expectations, suffering follows. The healthiest relationships are formed not by two incomplete people attempting to rescue one another, but by two individuals who have cultivated meaningful lives independent of the relationship itself. They choose one another freely rather than out of emotional necessity. Maintaining friendships, pursuing personal passions, nurturing one's spiritual and psychological growth, and preserving a strong sense of individuality are not threats to intimacy. They are essential foundations for it. The stronger your connection to yourself, the less another person's inconsistency can destabilize your inner world, and the more capable you become of loving without losing yourself in the process. In the end, understanding avoidance is not about changing them, chasing them, or sacrificing yourself to keep them close. It is about understanding the deeper fears that shape human behavior while remaining firmly connected to your own worth. The healthiest relationships are built when two individuals can love one another without losing themselves. Remember, genuine love does not require you to abandon who you are. It invites both people to grow. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, consider reflecting on your own relationship patterns and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for more insights into the hidden depths of human psychology. Until next time, take care of yourself and continue the journey toward greater self-understanding.